when Huhi was demoted to the lowest social class. I never once mentioned breaking off our engagement. But after he was granted the title of loyal and righteous marquee, he actually wanted to marry his younger sister as his wife. He wanted me to be the concubine. During the mid-autumn palace banquet, the full moon shone brightly. This was the first banquet hosted by the new emperor after his ascension to the throne, inviting all the ministers, the wealthy and idle of the capital gathered together, engaging in lively conversation. But as soon as I entered the hall, the surrounding area fell silent. Dozens of gazes turned toward my sister and me. The man beside me, Wen Ning, was my younger sister. By custom, she had no right to enter the palace, just as in previous years. But the reason was the floating brocade she wore today. It was bestowed by the emperor upon the newly favored court official, the loyal and righteous Marquis Huhi. If it were merely a case of a wife gaining status through her husband, it would be commonplace in this dynasty. But Huhi, according to the marriage contract, was my betrothed. The sisters of the prime minister's mansion competing for the same man, a scandalous tale that had been the talk of the capital in recent days, had now been brought before the imperial family. Just as I was about to take my seat, Wen Ning suddenly pulled on my sleeve. Her almond-shaped eyes were moist, naturally filled with grievance, and she spoke timidly. "Eldest sister, it's windy out here. Can I sit inside?" No one would provide a table placed vertically, dividing it into inner and outer sections. What she truly desired was to sit above me, towering over me. I said nothing, only smiled and fixed my gaze on Wen Ning's eyes. We stood there in a standoff, listening to the noble women chatting beside us. They say that thieves start by stealing small things and grow bolder over time. Today they steal a garment, tomorrow a seat, and the day after tomorrow they might steal a house or even a person. The one speaking was Qinlian Jiao, the daughter of a general. She had grown up in the military with her father and brothers, so her words were blunt but reasonable. At a royal banquet with strict etiquette, what was she trying to pull? The one mocking her with a smile was Zhao Jini, the daughter of a marquis's mansion. Her circumstances were similar to mine. Her father had always favored his concubines and neglected his wife. Everyone knows I'm the victim, and they're all willing to help me. But those who break their word have no shame. The commotion grew louder and louder. Wen Ning bit her lips tightly. Her face flushed red, as if she had been bullied badly. But her hands still refused to let go of my sleeve, urging me to sit down. We waited until Huhi came over personally. Huhi stood 8 feet tall and imposing. When it came to rescuing a beauty, he relied on his authority. Wherever Ninger wants to sit, let her sit there. You're usually so tolerant and magnanimous, why can't you do so today? I refused to let her. An unmarried woman must adhere to the distinction between legitimate and concubine-born. Having his face publicly humiliated, Huhi furrowed his thick brows. When his eyes swept over me, there was no trace of the tenderness from our youth. He sneered, then gently took Wen Ning's hand and comforted her. "Ninger, you'll have to sit here for now. Once we've finished with the imperial edict, you can come sit with me." The imperial edict. It seemed he was determined to break his promise and marry another woman today. In truth, given Wen Ning and her mother's recent arrogance, I could have guessed what the two of them were planning. I just didn't expect. After 10 years of affection, Huhi insists on severing it here and now. Our ancestors sealed this marriage in the Golden Hall, yet he insists on seeking honor and prestige for his beloved here, leaving me utterly humiliated. To say there is no bitterness in my heart would be a lie. But just as I am determined to cling to this high position, what matters most to me, as the legitimate daughter, is power and influence. The wine was intoxicating, and Huhi drank several cups in quick succession. Wen Ning's concerned gaze lingered on him, and she didn't stop talking, Hua family brother. You're truly very happy about our marriage today, aren't you? I smiled faintly, too lazy to argue. After a few more cups, the arrogance of his success grew increasingly faded, revealing a hint of irritation. When the music and dance ended, it was time for him to step forward and present his request. For some reason, he hesitated before rising. Just as he was about to move, his grandfather's student, Zhang Shirling of the Ministry of Rites, stepped forward first. Your Majesty, I have a treasure to present today. He ordered someone to present a silk-lined box, which contained a legendary ancient zither. Its body was made of paulownial wood, the base of cypress, and it was lacquered in purple, known as the Nine Heavens ornament. The beauty of the zither was such that the moment the strings were plucked, everyone could hear its melody. The noble guests at the banquet, intrigued by his description, began to discuss among themselves, is there anyone here who can play the zither? Soon, someone mentioned my name, Wen Yun. The emperor cast a glance in my direction, and the eunuch by his side immediately asked with a smile, Lady Wen, would you care to play a tune? My hands were still trembling slightly beneath the table, but I replied gracefully, this humble maiden is honored. Gentle spring breezes blew, and the sound of jade ornaments echoed. As I played the spring snow piece with such passion, a smile blossomed on my face. Looking up, I found my gaze mingling with the emperor's intoxicated eyes, intertwining with a few threads of genuine emotion. The sky blue robe I wore today, amidst the delicate and vibrant attire of the noble ladies, originally seemed like a supporting role, but when it blended into the melody, it transformed into a unique touch of spring in the grand hall. What a beautiful piece! With such profound meaning, the emperor did not hesitate to praise me, clapping 3 times. Praise flowed like a spring from the guests at the table. What reward would you like? The young emperor smiled, his majesty tinged with the teasing of a ruler. My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly regained my composure. Your Majesty, I wish to share the reward with the loyal and brave marquee. Everyone at the table was stunned, thinking I was trying to steal someone's husband. Wen Ning was so startled that she accidentally knocked her wine cup to the ground, murmuring softly, no. How could this be? The emperor's finger twitched slightly, signaling Hua Huichuan to step forward. He knelt on the ground with a resolute expression. This servant and Wen Ning, the concubine's daughter of the Wen family, are deeply in love. This lifetime, I only wish to marry her as my lawful wife. Give him a taste of his own medicine, and he actually plays the part. Doesn't he even look at himself? Does he think he's worthy of me? This servant and the loyal and brave marquis were betrothed in childhood, but by now, we have grown apart in temperament and interests, and we are truly not a suitable match. Hearing this, Hua Huichuan suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with disbelief and burning anger. He couldn't accept it. Those words came from my mouth. Today, I humbly request the emperor to dissolve our engagement. But I grabbed the initiative, not out of resentment. I feared that being rejected would tarnish my reputation and prevent me from marrying well. So I endured the humiliation for so long. As the palace banquet dispersed, Wen Ning and I boarded 2 separate carriages. Many noble women gathered around, congratulating me on escaping the turmoil. I thanked each of them, grateful that none of them had competed with me for the qin today. However, upon returning to the mansion, the moment the gates closed, there was no trace of joy left. When Qingxiang shouted angrily, "Disobedient daughter, kneel down!" I also looked at Wen Ning by his side and shouted, "Your father is calling you. Why don't you kneel?" When Qingxiang was so angry he couldn't speak. After a long while, he finally managed to ask, "Marriage is a matter of great importance. It is the will of one's parents and the words of the matchmaker. How dare you not consult me and instead ask the emperor to annul the marriage on the imperial throne?" My heart grew cold, and I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. You and Huichuan agreed that Wenning would be the eldest and I the youngest. Do you not remember that you are also my father? Minister 1, though aged, has grown even more foolish, unable to speak reason, and having learned nothing of the art of stubbornness from his concubines. He could only watch as I bowed and withdrew. Wenning grew anxious. She shook his hand and poured oil on the fire. Father, please don't blame my sister. It's all my fault. This was the last straw. I turned around without hesitation and slapped her across the face. It is indeed your fault. If Huichuan had ever been involved with any other young lady from any other family outside the Wen mansion, I would have already been able to formally call off the engagement with dignity. Instead, I've been worrying day and night about her happiness and what her mother might do to ruin my reputation in future. After the palace banquet, the servants in the mansion all thought I had lost the engagement and would be completely powerless. Except for my childhood maid. Everyone else had left. I was actually glad to have some peace and quiet. So I carefully sorted through my mother's belongings and the list of her dowry in the main mistress's quarters. However, as the sun set, when Qingxiang returned from court, the imperial edict conferring the title of empress arrived, ordering me to enter the palace in 3 days. After thanking the emperor, the entire family felt awkward and wanted to leave. I, however, called out the names of Wenning's birth mother, Yang Xiaonyang, and ordered her to stay. My mother's dowry must not be included in Wenning's dowry. Tomorrow, everything must be returned to me. Yang Xiaonyang panicked, tears streaming down her face, feeling deeply wronged. Madam, how kind-hearted you are. If she were still alive, she would never have refused to provide dowry for Ninger. I bent down slightly and whispered in her ear. If my mother were still alive, would you dare to instigate Wenning's daughter to climb into a man's bed before she was even married? Startled, Yang Xiaonyang was so frightened that her knees went weak. My suspicions were confirmed, and I felt a darkness descend over my eyes. A year ago, when Huichuan was demoted to a lowly status, I had gone to visit him. Not only did I promise him face to face that I would never break off the engagement, but I also played him a piece of music called Xiaxiang Water Clouds to encourage him to be a loyal minister and serve the emperor. But he seemed to have lost his mind, only wanting to cross the line with me. A woman's chastity is the most important thing. Yuner, only if you give it to me will I believe you will never leave me. My body is my own, and so is my purity. I will not sacrifice my principles for the sake of anyone in distress. I threatened to take my own life to escape unscathed. Later, when the emperor ascended the throne, Huichuan regained his power. When he suddenly became infatuated with Wenning, I began to harbor doubts. Last night, I returned home later than usual. Seeing Wenning get off the carriage, which continued toward the Zhongying Marquis's mansion, my suspicions grew even stronger. Now, everything is clear. But I resent this prime minister's mansion for becoming so corrupt since my mother left. Yang Xiaonyang regained her composure and still wanted to call for help. Since when Qingxiang is of no use to me, she summoned the loyal and brave marquee. But men are all the same, they value their own face above all else. As soon as Huichuan saw my radiant appearance, he immediately changed the subject. Wen Yun, from now on, you should be addressed as Wen Fei. No wonder you never played such refined music as Yongchen Baixue for me. You must have looked down on me, a mere marquis, all along, didn't you? After figuring out what he did to Wenning these past 2 days, any lingering feelings I had for him have vanished completely. Seeing his face now only makes me feel sick. I turned away and spoke quickly and logically. Perhaps Wenning told you that I wanted to grab her dowry. But you only need to know one thing, what she and her mother secretly hid were my mother's dowry. Even if you report it to the authorities, I would still be in the right. Huichuan's mind, however, seemed to have lost its senses overnight. And he completely twisted the meaning. Ninger. How kind-hearted you are. Why must you use your mother's name to make things difficult for her? Let me tell you the truth, after you finished playing the zither at the palace banquet that day, I had already intended to let you and her become my concubines together. Unfortunately, you could never accept her. Heaven and earth are my witnesses, what a shameless face you have. I was almost driven to laughter. I turned around and kindly reminded him. Lord Zhongyong, only 2 days have passed. Have you already forgotten who it was who first suggested the annulment in the emperor's presence? Heaven help us. After regaining this memory, Huichuan's overbearing arrogance finally subsided somewhat, along with his rationality. But that damned competitive spirit still refused to fade. No matter what. I was the one who changed my mind first. I wanted to call off the engagement. And I do owe you an apology. You owe me an apology. But I also owe you a thank you. Thank you for not marrying me. Send him away. When I smiled and shouted those 2 words, Huichuan was still dazed. Even the servants in the courtyard were more perceptive than him upon hearing the commotion. They immediately escorted him out. Before leaving the mansion, I still had many matters to settle. Let him keep his schemes to sing to Ning. In the past, when the noble ladies gathered, Chen Lianjiao would always say, the inner courtyard is a cage for women. Before marriage, one is trapped in one cage. After marriage, one flies into another. Everyone laughed at her for being the wildest-hearted. But as they laughed, tears welled up in their eyes. The palace gates are closed, and the walls are high. Now I have flown into the deepest, most secure cage in the world. And when I think of it, I feel that fate has played a cruel joke on me. The maids led me into the Yongshou Palace and placed me in the main seat. Before I could even adjust to my new surroundings, the emperor arrived that evening. He was not dressed in the formal attire of a palace banquet. Instead, he looked somewhat familiar. After twirling his jade ring twice, he suddenly leaned close and asked with a smile, "When did you first wish to enter the palace?" My gaze met his narrow eyes, and I saw the scrutiny within. I immediately rose and knelt before him, showing submission. There is no woman in the world who does not admire the emperor at all times. The emperor recognized the flattery, and with a light hum, he laughed helplessly. He reached out, gently lifted my chin, and traced my lips with his fingertips. You are both beautiful and wise. You are indeed the most suitable companion for the emperor. The lamps in the outer hall were all extinguished. That night, I experienced the pleasures of love for the first time. Blushing so much that I could only lean against him completely. The emperor, however, was even more energetic and thoroughly satisfied. Finally, he played with my hand to amuse himself. My beloved concubine, your fingers are as tender as spring shoots. No wonder you excel at the zither. In an instant, I felt pain beneath me and pain in my heart. But since I had come this far, I must fight for the emperor's favor. The emperor was the youngest brother of the late emperor. As a posthumous child, he was born and raised in the Yongwang mansion, where he was granted a title. The late emperor had few heirs. Therefore, not only did he treat the emperor like a brother and a father, showering him with love and care, but he also educated him to be far more outstanding than the 2 eligible princes of the same age. However, at the critical moment when the late emperor was gravely ill, the northern Di invaded. The emperor's intentions were unpredictable, and the emperor was sent to the border to fight the invaders by imperial decree. The situation became chaotic and uncertain. Huichuan made a mistake at this critical moment. He was ignorant and arrogant. Having read only 2 history books, he dared to advise the emperor in court that the current general was not suitable for the mission, and that the Prince of Yong should not leave the capital at this critical moment. He was accused by the prince's faction of attempting to defy the emperor's orders. and even implicated the emperor in the charge of having ulterior motives. Had it not been for the merits of his ancestors, he would have faced certain execution. Fortunately, though he was foolish in the past, his character was not entirely corrupt. In his time of distress, everyone around him was willing to pull him out of the mud. Huichuan's eldest brother volunteered to accompany the emperor on the campaign, offering to save him through military merits. I also secretly wrote numerous articles praising the late emperor's bond with the emperor, attributing them to Huichuan to increase his chances. If any of the other princes ascended the throne, he would be of lowly birth, with no further demotion possible. But if the emperor ascended the throne, he would surely make a stunning comeback. The fact is, I bet correctly. The eldest brother of the Hu family even died saving the emperor, and we worked together to secure a title of loyalty and righteousness for Huichuan, who only knew how to complain. Now his future is bright, but I regret it deeply. Being abandoned in marriage is a small matter, but after entering the palace, I realized that it was I who had planted a new nobleman in the previous dynasty who harbored hatred and could strike me at any moment. That is a much bigger matter. This humble servant pays his respects to Lady Wen. On that day in the palace, I happened to encounter Huichuan and intended to pretend we were strangers. But he deliberately blocked my path, gritting his teeth and advancing menacingly. Does the empress know why this humble servant has come to pay his respects today? I came to pay my respects to the emperor. What does that have to do with me? The palace is full of ears and eyes. Anyone with a mind could guess that he once had a betrothal with me and now lingers outside the imperial study, threatening my reputation. Yet he has no boundaries. I could only suppress the displeasure between my brows and smile coldly. I do not know, and I need not know. Huichuan. The more face I give him, the more shameless he becomes. After snorting disdainfully, he dared to step forward 2 paces and stare intently into my eyes, challenging me. Your Majesty's harem is empty, yet you delay selecting concubines. Could this also have nothing to do with the empress? How absurd. He cannot control his own desires, yet he dares to meddle in the emperor's affairs, both openly and secretly. He seeks to frame me with the charge of jealousy. At this point, retreating would only create future trouble, so I argued back. Lord Zhongyong, watch your words. Though I am a concubine, I have no authority over the harem. The matter of selecting concubines is already decided in the emperor's heart. Seeing that he was still trying to cling on, I added in a low voice, What? Did Lord Zhongyong not understand the emperor's orders again? Are you planning to defy them? Struck at his weak point, Huichuan felt a lump in his throat and could not utter another word. Outside the imperial study, dark clouds gathered, and the weight of the palace pressed down on his heavy shoulders, making the air so oppressive he could barely breathe. His breathing became rough and stuffy. Just then, footsteps sounded inside the room. Huichuan remained silent, eager to turn and leave, but he was stopped by the eunuch who had just stepped out. Hu called out and tapped him. Lord Yongho. Even an official from outside the palace must pay respects to a concubine of the palace. Though he was unwilling, he had no choice but to kneel and perform the proper etiquette. No one called him to rise. The eunuch led him inside while smiling and explaining. The emperor said that those who frequently overstep their bounds must be taught a lesson. Behind me, a sudden downpour poured down, drenching my heart with relief. 3 months after entering the palace, I was diagnosed with pregnancy. The emperor was overjoyed. Upon hearing the news after court, he rushed to my palace and asked me, Pregnancy is a great achievement. What title does Yuner desire? After dismissing the palace attendants, I smiled and said to him, to leisurely watch the flowers bloom and fade in the courtyard, and to casually follow the clouds as they gather and disperse in the sky, unmoved by honor or disgrace, indifferent to coming or going. I wanted to use the character Shu to persuade myself, favor is as fleeting as clouds. I must cherish the present, seize the opportunity to eliminate future troubles, and establish a firm foothold. Sure enough, as soon as the news of my impending title as imperial consort spread, some people could not sit idly by. The next day, when Huichuan brought Wen Ning to pay their respects, I was resting in the rear hall of the emperor's bedchamber, waiting for them to put on their show. I heard Huichuan first kneel down with a thud and shout, "Your Majesty, I cannot bear to see you being deceived." Then Wen Ning spoke in a sweet voice, "Your Majesty, I only learned from my father that the 9 heavens ringed Pei Qin was originally found by Wen Fei's maternal grandfather, Su Guogong. Wen Fei went to great lengths to enter the palace. Moreover, when Wen Fei entered the palace, she not only took all of my biological mother's dowry but also took the dowry my biological mother had left for me. Such character is unworthy of such a position. What a smooth tongue, twisting the truth. Had I not anticipated this, I might have been so shocked that, to protect my pregnancy, I would not have dared to confront them directly. You truly are my good sister." I smiled and walked out. Wen Ning, upon seeing me, grew flustered. But she was a natural actress. Immediately kneeling on the ground and muttering, "Sister, Lady One, don't hit me, don't hit me." I had only hit her once before. But today, there would be a second time. As I approached, I turned my back to the emperor, my eyes filled with scorn. "These are all trivial family matters. But if you insist on dragging this before the emperor, I will make it clear once and for all. Your departure from the palace today is also convenient for you to return to your maternal home on my behalf, so that when Qingxiang may resign his post on his own accord." I relaxed my brows and smiled. Wen Ning was intimidated by my resolute demeanor and began to cling to the hem of my robe, shaking her head. Alas, it was too late. To prevent Wen Ning from acting impulsively and harming the dragon fetus in my womb, I signaled the palace attendants to hold her tightly before continuing. "Your mistress is cunning and scheming. Wen Qingxiang, you favor a concubine and neglect your wife. Over the past decade, the two of you have worked together to drive my mother, the daughter of a duke and a lady of noble birth, to the point of illness and death from grief. All these unspeakable deeds. Before I entered the palace, I had already obtained the indenture contract of her personal maid, Chun Tao, which clearly stated the details. The testimony, with fingerprints, is kept in my palace, just in case a day like today comes, when I am entangled by evil people and need to protect myself." Wen Ning was also well prepared, crying with tears streaming down her face. She still clung to her words. "Your Highness is the legitimate daughter. Dealing with my lowly mother is as easy as turning over one's hand. We, mother and daughter, couldn't even keep our dowry. How could we possibly resist your power?" Huichuan couldn't bear to see her in such a pitiful state. He immediately knelt down, heartbroken, and embraced her. "Ning'er has always been kind-hearted. Just because you hate her, are you willing to drag her stepmother and her own father into this as well? If it were any other time, I would think the two of them were thick-skinned and well-suited for each other. They should have spent their lives together instead of harming others. But today, they have both fallen into my hands. Then I can only tear off their masks and let them see each other's true ugliness." I turned to the emperor to seek his instructions, my face filled with difficulty. "Your Majesty, what I am about to reveal about the Wen family's secrets may be offensive to your ears. I wonder if..." The emperor waved his hand dismissively, signaling me to speak freely. I nodded gratefully in thanks. Then I looked at Wen Ning and exposed her shame in all its gory detail. "Yang Xianyang's most serious mistake was inciting you to have an affair with a man before you were married. If the loyal and brave marquee does not believe me, bring back your wife's trusted maid and the carriage driver from the mansion for interrogation. and the truth will be revealed. Yang Xiaonyang, driven by ambition, persuaded you to sacrifice yourself, saying, since your elder sister has not annulled the engagement, that man will not come to harm. You suffer now, but in the future, you will surpass her, and your mother will be elevated to the position of legitimate wife. Alas, this hope was ultimately misplaced. My mother fell into her hands because she loved my father too much. If you take pride in this and use her carefully nurtured daughter, who can't even keep her composure, to fight against me, that would truly be like hitting a stone with an egg. Huichuan stepped back in shock, leaving Wen Ning alone, collapsed on the ground. He asked in disbelief, "Impossible. How could I not know you? Did you really give yourself to me just for power?" Wen Ning cried as she grabbed his sleeve and protested. "No, husband. A woman's reputation is so important. I didn't do it because of my stepmother's scheme. I truly loved you." But admitting to having a scheme was enough to pierce someone's pride. Huichuan's face was cold, looking completely humiliated. He had clearly taken advantage of her, yet he acted as if he were the one who had lost his reputation. He was so foolish. There were many things he didn't know. He didn't know that when I played the Shaoxiang water cloud melody, the emperor, dressed in plain white, had been listening outside his mansion. He didn't know that the emperor most loved women dressed in sky blue, or that the 9 heavens ornament was just a pretense. I entered the palace because the emperor liked me. As long as the emperor liked me. Some thoughts of seeking favor were merely whims. Moreover, the child in my womb already has the backing of the Su Guogong lineage. If I were to have another chancellor as my maternal grandfather, it would be like water overflowing from a full vessel. The loyal and brave marquee, who cannot distinguish right from wrong and has disgraced the imperial heirs, has been punished with a year's salary deduction. When Ning behaved improperly and slandered the imperial concubine, he deserved a beating. But my child cannot have a criminal as a maternal grandfather. Fearing it would hurt her too deeply, I did not tell the chancellor what had happened today. I only punished him with 10 slaps on the face. A beauty with fair skin cannot endure such treatment. Her face soon swelled and bruised, losing all her former charm. Though Huichuan had already left the palace alone, in her state of disgrace and ugliness, with her beloved not by her side, Wen Ning might have felt fortunate. I ordered the palace attendants to help her up and sit beside me. All the grievances Wen Ning had been holding in poured out as she drew closer. "Empress Wen, why have you gone so far as to exterminate me completely?" "I indeed intend to exterminate you completely. But I will not stop here. But I am no longer the same as before, always arguing with her. Instead, I used my fingers to gently apply the finest medicinal ointment from the imperial hospital to her face and spoke softly. Ning-er, all my grievances toward you have been settled. Once you leave the palace gates today, you may gradually discover that your father's power has waned. Your husband's love has faded. And the marquis's mansion you married into at the urging of your concubine is nothing more than another prison. But remember, your elder sister is the imperial concubine in the palace. If you ever find life in the marquis's mansion unbearable, you may always come back to me." Perhaps it was the premium ointment soothing her wounds that made her feel so cool and comfortable. Wen Ning's tears welled up in her eyes, but she hesitated, unable to look away. I smiled as I covered the ointment and placed it in her hands. "Your face has always been so beautiful since you were a child. Once you finish these 2 jars of ointment, there won't be a single trace left. If you're still worried, you can ask a doctor to examine you when you return to the mansion." When Ning's tears flowed more freely than mine, she truly inherited her stepmother's trait. She cried and reached out her hand, just like when she was a child trying to grab candy. "Sister, why only 1 jar? Where's the other one?" The performance must be complete, so I had to give her the other one. Wen Ning's greed was just like Yang Xiaonyang's. As a child, she grabbed her sister's candy. As an adult, She grabbed her sister's marriage. But she didn't know that what could be grabbed was cheap and couldn't be kept. The truly precious things never circulate. The second summer after entering the palace, when Qingxiang had resigned from his official post long ago, and when Ning had completely lost the support of her maternal family. Moreover, Huichuan had already uncovered the truth about her voluntary surrender, leaving him with a bitter taste in his mouth, and he treated her with icy coldness. That year, I was elevated to imperial consort by the emperor for giving birth to his eldest son. I had previously offered her a way out. Therefore, to maintain the outward appearance of being the sister of the imperial consort, Wen Ning had no choice but to frequently enter the palace and grovel before me. At this point, when I asked her, "How is the loyal and brave marquis lately?" she would no longer think I was coveting him. Instead, a hint of disgust flashed in her eyes. "He has lofty ambitions but lacks the talent to achieve them." I feigned surprise and asked her how she could speak so harshly of her own husband. She could only smile awkwardly and explain to me, "These words are not mine, they are the emperor's. He said that the articles he writes now are far less moving than those he wrote when he was down on his luck." Upon hearing this, a thunderclap echoed in my mind. When Huichuan was down on his luck, he never wrote a single article. A bowl of rice brings gratitude, a bushel of rice brings hatred. No wonder he felt such love and hate toward me. It was because he had truly claimed those articles as his own before the emperor. I was overjoyed and rewarded her with many fine gifts to take back to the mansion. Another autumn palace banquet arrived. Year after year, the palace was adorned with flowers and the moon was round. But year after year, people's minds and circumstances were different. Today, I sat in the highest seat, beside the emperor. When raising their cups, everyone in the hall must bow 3 times and kowtow 9 times to me. Yet the loyal and brave marquis, who was once the center of attention last year, is now ignored by all. After 3 rounds of wine, he and his wife seemed to be arguing. I immediately ordered the attendants by my side to lead Wen Ning into the side chamber of my bedchamber. I also sent someone to convey my orders, warning Huichuan not to act recklessly. After the palace banquet dispersed, he came to my palace to apologize to Wen Ning. He did come, but he arrived with his head held high, looking arrogant and imposing. "Where is Wen Ning? Hand her over immediately." Huichuan did not bow, but instead walked straight up to me. This time, I coldly laughed and uttered the word arrogant. The guards by my side had already drawn their swords and placed them against his neck. Seeing this, Huichuan laughed up at the sky, filled with resentment. "How could a woman's life be so easy? Your sister, a scheming concubine's daughter, married me and became the wife of the marquis. You, a woman I once abandoned, have now become the esteemed imperial concubine. The heavens are unfair. I have served the emperor with all my loyalty and dedication. Yet I am not recognized by the emperor. It must be because I was not born a woman. Wine and meat have turned Huichuan into a fool." Hearing these words, I even began to doubt. Is he drunk? Or have I heard wrong? If you were a woman, losing your father at birth would make you a father's curse. Losing your brother in your youth would make you a brother's curse. With these 2 traits, you would be rejected by the world, sent to a nunnery to atone for your sins, and spend your life in front of a lamp and a Buddha statue. Looking at his court robes, I felt ashamed for him. "Loyal and brave marquis, your bravery comes from your elder brother's military achievements. But where does your loyalty come from? Do you dare swear to heaven that those articles bearing your name were all written by you?" Some people believe that their unfulfilled ambitions are due to bad fortune. But if one is nothing but sand, no matter how fierce the waves, they will never leave a trace. We have never had anything to say to each other. Return this merit to him, and he will indeed have nothing more to say to me. Those armed guards are imperial bodyguards. The emperor is currently in the rear hall of my palace. listening to his outrageous words. Tonight, the loyal and brave marquee will drown himself in the river out of frustration. The crime of betraying the emperor deserves death without a proper burial. As for his title, since he has no son, it will be inherited by his eldest brother's legitimate son. After Huichuan left, the emperor emerged from the rear hall and asked me, "Were those articles written by my beloved concubine? The harem must not interfere in state affairs." I answered evasively, neither confirming nor denying. "Your Majesty and the late emperor were as close as brothers. Those articles were the voice of the people. And naturally, they were also the voice of this concubine." The emperor's suspicions remained unresolved. I remembered that when Ning of the past had improper conduct. I looked into his eyes and chose words that were true to take his trust. "Your Majesty, I do indeed hate her. But I also understand a truth: one does not choose their birth. If my mother had been like her stepmother, the moonlight was like water, bathing me in a layer of radiance." His Majesty took my hand, and pity welled up in his eyes. He sighed and spoke of the past, of how he had been restless in the northern frontier. But fortunately, those writings had reminded him that the late emperor had treated him as both father and son. This prevented him from making mistakes and allowed him to ascend the throne rightfully. I also spoke with him. I told him how I had admired him from the start. How even as a prince, he could understand the people's concerns and address the issues of the time, and how he would surely become a wise ruler for the ages. As dawn broke, the emperor remained energetic, smiling and saying, "It's been a long time since I heard you play the zither. Why not play a piece today?" He then ordered someone to bring the 9 heavens ringed zither. I sat down, gazing at the zither with 1,000 thoughts swirling in my mind. The moon was bright and the water calm. The zither's melody rose again, flowing like a gentle stream. This piece, high mountains and flowing water, has always been my finest composition. As the piece came to an end, the emperor had already fallen asleep, smiling amidst the lingering notes of the zither. The next day, my eldest son was named crown prince. The emperor, seeing my astonishment, broke with tradition and explained the reason. "Our children will never go wrong." For the next 3 years, I remained deeply favored. After giving birth to twins, I was crowned empress. If it were merely a case of a wife gaining status through her husband, it would be commonplace in this dynasty. When the emperor passed away, my son ascended the throne. I rose to the highest position in the realm, becoming the most noble person in the land. From then on, the high-ranking officials of this dynasty all bore my blood. Uncomfortable with the strict palace life, I moved to the imperial retreat. Here, the mountains and rivers were picturesque, and the views were vast. Lying on a boat, gazing at the sky, all the clouds seemed to spread out endlessly. By the shore, a new palace maid approached my senior maid with a request. "Lady Lingqiu, there is an old woman outside the imperial villa who appears to be insane. She claims to be the Empress Dowager's younger sister. Should I inform you?" Lingqiu laughed and said, "In the former residence of the Wen Chancellor, there was only one legitimate daughter of the Empress Dowager. Where could there be a younger sister? Send her away to a place 5 miles away and do not allow her to approach again." And